In this week's episode, I interview Nikolai Dimitrov.
There's a skill set, there's a technical skill set that everybody has to master, and then there's a mindset that has to eventually be attached to that skill set so that the performance, activity really clicks into place. What people really tend to call talent, these rare individuals simply have developed some of these qualities, some of these elements of the skill set or the mindset somewhere else, doing something else. I believe the cornerstone of really professional trading is flexibility. And as part of that, I always try to anticipate various scenarios for development. That's one of the most difficult, aspects that aspiring traders struggle with, and it's managing to frame what a stop out or a loss means for them so that it actually brings something constructive to the table rather than negative emotions or disrupted focus. I believe the only emotion that traders should experience is confidence, and also if you don't know your tools well, you're not going to trust your work, and when you don't trust your work, it will be very hard to manifest confidence. And like I already mentioned, confidence is the only emotion you should be striving to experience, and that is very rarely the case in the beginning for traders.
From the outside looking in, it can sometimes appear that peak performers have an elusive talent or skill that sets them apart from the rest of us. However, what usually sets peak performers apart isn't what they can do, it's what they will do. You are listening to the Trading Edges Podcast, the podcast dedicated to seeking and sharing the best ideas and principles from peak performers across all domains of performance and achievement to help you discover your full trading potential.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 13th episode of Trading Edges. In this week's episode, I catch up with trader and trading coach Nikolai Dimitrov. Now, just a bit of backstory. I met Nikolai a couple years ago at a trading seminar held by the trading outfit at which he coaches. And what struck me right away about Nikolai was his level of depth and the quality of his ideas. I consider Nikolai a friend and a real kindred spirit. And what I admire most about Nikolai, though, and which you can just tell when he speaks, is his passion for quality. He has like a craftsman-like work ethic when it comes to trading, and I find that really inspiring. So, in this episode, you'll hear us talk about the foundations for peak performance, the importance of confidence as an emotion, and what it takes to go from good to great. It's a show chocked full of big ideas. So get out your pen and paper, or as always, you can find the show notes, transcript, and resources at thetradingedge.org/episode 13. It's been a true pleasure to do these shows. So if you're enjoying these podcasts, please leave us a review on iTunes so that others can find the show. Now, on to the episode. Hello, Nikolai. Welcome to the show.
Houston, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to get more into Nikolai and his background and why I brought him on the show in just a few moments. But first off, I just want to give a little bit of background on Nikolai. Nikolai is a trader, a trading coach, and someone I consider a friend. And I've been really excited to get him on the show because I think he has some really great insights that he can share with all of us around trading and a lot of other interesting topics. So I've always been impressed by Nikolai, and I'll get Nikolai to give you his background now in just a few moments. But I think Nikolai is one of those rare breeds where he kind of walks the talk and brings a lot of depth. So why don't we get started? So Nikolai, why don't you share with us a bit of your background? Tell us who you are maybe, and tell us about your trading background and your approach to trading.
Houston, thank you for the much too generous introduction. My name is Nikolai. I'm from Bulgaria. I live in the U.S. for about 10 years now. I'm a professional trader and a senior instructor with the Day Trading Academy. I work on a few projects with them. I've been trading for about well, it depends on where you draw the line, but I've been interested in trading for at least 10 years. Where I came from Eastern Europe, there really was almost no opportunities to really even get acquainted with trading. So I really started somewhere, it must have been in the mid-noughties with, I was trading really physical currencies, pretty much trying to arbitrage between them or just follow how the currencies relate to each other and pretty much by feel try to go back and forth. And of course I've had my ups and downs with that, and back then was the first time in my life when I had a little bit of money on the side that I wanted to do something with. Then one of the pivotal moments with trading in the beginning was when I was in university. I got a management degree, and while I was in the school, there was a very interesting guest speaker who came. He used to work as a broker or a runner somewhere on Wall Street, right down on the floor, and he made a very interesting presentation of the psychology and the interaction between big institutional traders and the floor, and that really spiked my interest. I started to pretty much dig for information online mostly, and then eventually as I moved to the US full-time, which was in 2007, here of course the opportunities for trading education are significant. So I did some research and I got some courses and started with initially with options and a combination of lack of preparation, maybe even a little bit of arrogance, and some bad timing, because 2008 was when I first started to put real cash on the line, which was historically, everybody knows, some of the worst time possibly, of course, or the best time if you know what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, back then I didn't quite know what I'm doing. Having been successful in everything before that in my life, I've been a concert pianist. I've done bodybuilding on a semi-professional level. Did always great in school, and really expected trading to be just another success. And as most traders probably have figured out themselves, that's definitely not the case, especially in the beginning. Most people realize that it's much more difficult than it appears to be, and so did I. Lost a lot of money, of course, in the beginning, but the journey since has been mostly up, of course, with some downs along the way. And I gotta say that I've been consistently profitable for just over 3 years now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a lot of insights there. So, what do you think? Is it something like, in terms of your journey? Is it something when you finally cross that threshold towards being consistently successful? Was it something you needed to learn, or something you needed to unlearn to kind of to make that leap?
Well, there's definitely been some of both, yes. But probably the most crucial element, or probably the hardest one, that's why I realize is the most crucial one, is to, when I learned to really detach from the outcome and accept that being wrong is a normal event in the markets, and for that matter, I should expect it roughly about 50% of the time. And of course, as seasoned traders know the industry average, or of course their own performance. It's somewhat hard to be consistently right much above 50%. So it's really the money in this business, or my perspective at least, I believe, is made in the quality of the management of the risk that is assumed. So really learning to detach from the outcome and not use losing trades or even mistakes as really a judgment on my character or worth as a trader, and really to accept that on this journey, which I relatively early on realized is going to be somewhat long, I will make mistakes, I will pay for them myself, and I will have to learn from them or give up.
That's so well put, man. That's so well put.
And I just wanted to add up that quitting was never really an option for me, because I never really felt quite as interested in anything before I really came across trading. And I know it might sound like a cliche, but I really wanted to do only that. I just never really knew I wanted to do trading before I actually got exposed to it. So once I did, I really committed to it. And even though it's been a rough journey, I've never really considered quitting trading.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a very firm set of beliefs in terms of what you want to do and kind of what your goals are. But maybe I'll just back up a bit and we'll get deeper into how you trade in a few moments. But I thought that one idea that you shared was so important around just that little distinction between in terms of how we can judge ourselves and our performance, how that reflects perhaps on our self-worth. I think, traders often get tripped up on that. But I thought the distinction is very, very powerful because there's a big, big difference between saying I screwed up on a trade versus saying I'm a screw up because I can't trade. So I think that's a very, very powerful distinction you made early on. So thank you for sharing that.
Indeed, yes. It's mistakes. Trading is one of the hardest things to undertake, and
right.
Mistakes are to be expected. For that matter, if we never did any, we would either be extremely talented, which I personally don't believe that there is talent to be a trader, or you would be extremely lucky, which is not a realistic, consistent, occurrence. So, yes, there's a big difference between really using your performance, your numbers as a feedback, and using them as a judgment on your character. The second one being very destructive and very detrimental to the process of becoming a consistently profitable trader.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you said something in there. So do you think that talent is overrated then as it pertains to learning how to trade, or is it just that talent in the beginning will only take you so far? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, you mentioned in the beginning that I have a firm set of beliefs, and I believe I've reached some, milestones as beliefs, but I gotta tell you that wasn't always the case, and this relates to the question you're asking me as well. I used to believe that there is such a thing as trading talent, but especially over the last few years since I've been coaching, I realized that really it's a set of there's a skill set, there's a technical skill set that everybody has to master, and then there's a mindset that has to eventually be attached to that skill set so that the performance, activity really clicks into place. Yeah. And I used to believe that some people just have certain traits of character that would help them excel as traders, but in reality, over time, I really evolved away from that belief, and now I believe that just different people, because everybody comes from a different background to trading, and I believe that the people who do better than others in the beginning, what people really tend to call talent, these rare individuals simply have developed some of these qualities, some of these elements of the skill set or the mindset somewhere else, doing something else. Yeah. And when they come to the trading arena, they just happen to successfully and rapidly be able to transfer these skills. And I'm really talking not only, for example, spatial geometric recognition, but also traits as patience, discipline, anticipation, being able to see events a few steps in advance and plan accordingly. Yeah. These are really the things that help traders excel, and some people just come better prepared from other disciplines. For example, I've worked with professional athletes, and also I've observed the success of people with a background as in technical occupations, and of course programmers as well. Currently, I'm working with a ex-professional poker player. I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with how poker and trading are really related. Mm-hmm. It's been quite a journey of evolving my beliefs, and I gotta say that coaching has been really crucial to helping me realize how some of these pieces fit together with traders.
Yeah, it sounds like you've just having the chance to coach other traders, you're getting the chance to kind of integrate all these different ideas and then make them into a very solid base of knowledge. So what exactly what skills do you think transfer that if you pick someone from a particular profession, what are the most important skills that you think can transfer over to the trading game? You mentioned discipline. Obviously, there's some, like you said, some technical things in terms of maybe our ability to focus and pattern recognition. Anything else?
Yes, the ability to focus. I would say patience is a very big one. Also, the ability to quickly recover from, in sports it might be from a mistake. In trading as well from a mistake, but mostly from the emotional impact of a loss or a mistake. I'd say also the ability to stick to the plan and understand the fine balance between adapting and improvising based on objective information and actually falling for a bias or really becoming emotional and reactive.
Right.
And of course, while the former is very useful, the latter is very detrimental, but the line between them is very fine, and most traders, at least in the beginning, are not able to really develop this filter for themselves to monitor themselves and realize when they're doing one and having a nice, healthy adaptation to really what the market is offering them, and then at other times just sticking to the plan or really improvising in a way that's very unhealthy, like holding a bias or refusing to be flexible, etc.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk about that some more in a few moments, but let's change gears for a quick second and just maybe you can describe to us, so what is your approach to trading now? So how do you see the markets? What's your kind of selection process? What's your philosophy on the markets and how do you approach it?
Well, I do mostly day trading. I do trade the futures markets. I day trade the index, the ES, the S&P E-mini 500 futures. However, I also do some swing trading on a number of futures markets, including the bonds and notes, the currencies, the oil market. I believe the market is defined by logic almost all the time, with the exception of markets that are rare, that are very thinly traded, that are not liquid enough, and there's very limited participation. My approach, I guess the best way to explain it is I'm looking to understand where different groups of traders are positioning themselves, and I'm trying to create really a framework of who is playing where and therefore expecting what, because people exit the market for various reasons, rational or irrational, but everybody enters with the same intention to capture the moment at which the market is going to really move in the direction at which they expect. So everybody enters with expectation directionally, and what I'm really looking for, I guess the way to summarize my approach is I'm looking for people to get hurt, of course not literally but emotionally. I'm looking for complacency or really I'm looking for complacency to turn into fear or panic or disillusionment, and I believe that the market can be looked from the perspective really of Newtonian physics. There's action and reaction, and when you learn to recognize certain geometrical structures or patterns, I probably should have started by saying that I trade entirely technically, no fundamentals. I trade only from charts. Yeah. So there's a lot of spatial recognition, and when you learn to recognize certain structures and patterns and to really translate the language behind them, because at the end of the day you are trading, or I'm trading, or everybody's trading other people, whether in the form of discretionary traders or mechanized systems, but you got to understand that what you see on the chart is just the graphical coding of really of crowd behavior, of other people's expectations of how price will move over time. And when you learn to really put that into a behavioral context, that was one of the turning points for me when I learned to see the groups of traders and their expectations on the chart rather than just pivots and runs and highs and lows and lines, and really understand the behavioral context behind this.
So by understanding that behavioral context, does that give you more belief around your setups and your trades and when you enter, or how does that behavioral understanding help your trading, do you think?
Well, it helps me really to reframe what, for example, being wrong means. Because if you start with the premise that there's always certain logic behind the combined sentiment behind the market's movement, then you'd understand that when you're wrong, this is just information. The feedback loop. The market, the price action is telling you that you're committing to a premise that is breaking, and therefore, when I'm wrong, I'm simply adding up that new information to the picture, and I usually have another scenario that becomes much more compelling. Therefore, I believe that's important for every trader to reframe losses or mistakes in a constructive way, so that they're able to use them as information, because that leads to a number of positive adaptations. Being able to, as we already mentioned, to quickly recover, on the spot, not only mostly psychologically, mostly mentally, to really wipe the slate clean and reframe and get back in the game and follow the plan. That is something that professional athletes really do much better than aspiring traders without that background. So that is really where I feel my edge is, that I'm looking to understand, to frame the market, to understand what is going on, and then have a very practical adaptation to that by defining where and how to assume the risk. And then, of course, that's a very that's a topic we can talk about in an extent. I don't know how detailed you want to get here. Do you want to talk about some of the tools or?
Maybe we can talk about it a bit later. Maybe we'll just stay at this level for a second. So I'm curious. So most people when they hear of people day trading, and they imagine that a day trader is someone who sits in front of their screens from the moment the market opens to the moment the market closes. So what does your average trade day look like? Are you in front of your screens all day long, or what does your typical trading day look like?
Well, that would be an ideal case scenario. I love trading. I can easily sit in front of the screen all day, fascinated by the price action. However, unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of having so much time for my trading because I'm working on other projects as well. My coaching takes a significant amount of my time as well. But when I do have the opportunity to trade, I always try to sit down at least half an hour before the regular session opens. I firmly refuse to trade when I'm not prepared and haven't done my really, if you want to call it a pre-market routine, or I like to be prepared. For me, it's never really a matter of just sitting down and slapping something together. If I don't have the time, I just don't commit to it. I like to trade for at least 3 to 4 hours so that I'm able to really settle into it, and of course it depends on the tools that I'll be using on a certain market, but I usually try to get in the flow with the market for a while, be able to frame it, and then of course with the tools that I'm using, define some opportunities and see what the market brings.
Nice. So what time do you usually finish? Do you have a typical end day that you wrap up, or is it just based upon, like I said, other commitments and perhaps how well you're doing that day? Do you have any goals like that, or do you just keep on trading until your time is up?
I don't believe in placing an artificial ceiling on your results. Some days I believe traders should trade a lot, and on other days there's very little to be done. So it really depends on the market, and of course it depends on my personal input as a trader. If I'm not doing well, there's of course hard stops in place, and of course there's a cutoff if I reach that cutoff for the day. But also the bottleneck many times is the quality of the focus that I'm bringing to the table. If I see that I'm making mistakes or I'm getting distracted or not being able to bring the level of focus that I know I have to, and I usually do, I have learned to walk away without this being a judgment on my performance or anything like that. For me, it's at this point at least, and of course that was a big challenge over time to get to this point. But at this point, I can firmly say that it is in place, and I realize that if I'm not there in my best shape in terms of focus and mentally, emotionally, and even physically, there's no point in just swinging the bat when you're actually missing, because my capital is as good on a day when I'm in top shape and the market's moving well as it is on any other not so compelling day. So I've learned to pick my spots and also trade around my performance level.
That's fascinating. So can you share your routine, your pre-morning routine? Do you have is it a set ritual that you have that you try to follow, or is it just more of a, here's a checklist of things that I tend to do before I start my trading day?
Well, I'm a morning person, so I always get up pretty early, and of course it depends on which time zone I'm in, because I happen to travel all the time. But when I'm in my office here in my headquarters, and I trade the morning session, so I'm on the East Coast. I like to get up very early. Of course, wake up, stretch.
What time is early? How early is early?
Well, I rarely get up after 6 o'clock. The market opens at 9:30 Eastern.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I can cover before I sit down to trade as well. But I always like to have a nice solid breakfast. I don't drink coffee, but I do like to stretch and make sure that I'm physically very comfortable, because I don't know how other people see it, but for me, my level of performance is very intimately related to my physical well-being. If I'm sleep deprived or hungry or tired or in pain or in any other way physically inconvenienced, I know that the chances that I'll make a mistake and underperform are significant. So I try to really do everything to make sure that I'm comfortable when I sit down, so that I'm able to focus. I also like to really in the beginning, I always start with a clean chart, and I just sit down and look at the market I intend to trade, and really for about 10 to 15 minutes I like to just look at price without even touching the input, the mouse, to really draw anything. I like to just get into just really observe how the market is plotting and really try to get into the rhythm of it. And then of course I start adding up things in terms of framing. I trade mostly from naked charts. I don't use a lot of indicators. Whatever I put on the chart is mostly straight lines and something that a fifth grader can really draw on the chart. And that's pretty much it. And then of course sometimes I do trade before the market opens at 9:30. However, the majority of my executions are in the regular session. I'm also a big believer of taking breaks, because people get tired, and when they get tired they do make mistakes.
Right.
So that's pretty much it.
And in terms of the breaks, is it something like you try to take a break every half an hour, or just when there's a lull? What's your ideas around that?
Of course, it depends on the volatility. The market's very dynamic. I probably will stay glued to it most of the time. However, over time, Houston, I've developed a bit of a filter to constantly monitor myself, both physically and emotionally, and that's really, I've learned to trust these filters, and I check myself every so often. I used to time myself. I used to have like an alarm that was ringing every half an hour, so that I can get into the habit of checking how do I feel mentally, physically, and then of course I had to that attach some technical things that I was trying to do. So every time when the alarm rings, I was going back to making sure that I'm checking my context and looking for certain things that I tended to miss, and that really made a significant improvement to my trading.
Yeah, I think you shared that exercise with me a while back, and I was like, I was just very impressed that you were so detail focused on these little things, and I could see right away after you shared that with me that how impactful that could be by just, number one, having a very good feeling in terms of how you're feeling, sensations, emotions, and thoughts, but also, like you said, if there are things that are going on that you're missing, just using that maybe 30-minute or reminder to kind of reframe and kind of refocus again. So yeah, very powerful.
It's very, very important. I hope that your listeners understand how crucial it is to, over time, pay attention to these elements of trading, because it is a performance process, and I'm a firm believer that there's no really secret of trading intellectually other than really learning to properly use your tools, but then also paying a lot of attention to mastering yourself.
Yeah. And so, the exercise that Nikolai kind of talked about, and I'll just maybe summarize it for the folks who haven't heard it before. We had another guest on here, Rich Friesen, who has a similar exercise, but think about this. Every 30 minutes, maybe set an alarm or a timer, and when the alarm rings, just check in with yourself. And Richard Friesen calls it, the SET approach, sensations. So how do you physically feel? Emotions. So that's the E in set. SET. How do you actually, how are you feeling? And then your thoughts. So how are your thoughts? Are your thoughts, conducive? Are they positive, or are they negative, right? And just begin to track that over time and try to, get to a better place. It's not a race or a contest. You're not trying to knock it out every single time. You're just trying to be honest with where you are and maybe try to raise it up one level if you can.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody should have a routine, and for different people, different things work. But the framework you just described is a very good template.
Yeah, especially for someone who's first starting out and hasn't quite got a feel for exactly how they are during the trading day yet. They're a little bit unconscious about that. This will create a little structure for you to be a little more aware and a little bit more mindful. So zipping down one level. So tell us a little bit more about your trading. So you said you trade predominantly futures. Can you tell us how many trades would you typically take in a day? Is there an average, or does it just depend on the amount of action or the amount of opportunities that present themselves?
It definitely depends on the volatility, and I never really limit myself. Although there were points in my development when I had to, because as many traders I had swings in my behavior between being very conservative and very scared of the market, and episodes in which I've been very reactive, borderline reckless. So, but it really depends on what I'm offered. I've learned to really adapt in the healthiest of ways, I want to believe, to what the market offers. My average holding time, the average doesn't bring a lot of information, but it's probably between 5 to 10 minutes. Some positions I do hold longer. Other ones I'm in and out if I'm trading very close to the bone. Yeah. So it really depends on the price action, and I have in the past traded also options and dabbled with the stock market, but I do believe that the futures market and some forex markets as well are where my edge is.
So speaking of edge, so what do you we talked a little bit about this already in terms of what you think you bring to the table that's unique, but what do you we hear a lot about that, this idea of someone, we need to have our own unique edges. Do you believe that? And if so, what do you think are your unique edges? And they don't have to be just related to trading, but what are you bringing to the table that you think is unique to yourself?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're unique. For that matter, they're certainly not. But I'd say that patience and of course a positive attitude is something that I really rely on, and I believe is part of my trading edge. I've learned to really wait for the right moment, and I actually got to say that over time I learned to instead of fret over what the market's going to do, to really enjoy stalking the way the opportunity is going to set up.
I like that.
Also, a little bit more practically, I always get in at a good price. Like, if I don't get the market to offer me what I'm looking for, I simply walk away. I'm not interested. So that of course is part of a predefined risk management plan or the parameters that I'm looking for. So I would never really assume the risk in a situation in which I'm not very clear on what is the reward and what is really the expectation with which I'm getting into the market. Furthermore, I'm a big proponent of really working with scenarios. I really, there might be something you expect from the market, but I believe the cornerstone of really professional trading is flexibility. And as part of that, I always try to anticipate various scenarios for development. So I'm patient, and if I see a setup, I will enter, but I always assume that I might be wrong, and therefore I try to prepare myself for the alternatives. If I don't see the development that I expect, how is it going to look like? Is it going to offer me another opportunity? And of course, I try to define these parameters so that when the market does something, instead of like many inexperienced traders reacting to it and becoming emotional,
right.
Because both winners and winning and losing trades can trigger emotions, and neither side is really preferable. I believe the only emotion to that traders should experience is confidence, and also confidence. I believe, at least the way I feel it, it's I describe it as detached curiosity. You see, you really, I like to observe the market, and really, I love the market. So for me, it's fascinating to watch the movement and how the price patterns form. But at the same time, I never really feel compelled to participate. So that's the detached part. I really don't feel compelled that I have to be in the trade, or I'm missing a move, or I just missed the trade of the day. These are really fallacies that I believe as traders get more experience, they learn to overcome. And then the other part is risk management. I cannot possibly overstate the importance of always having stops, hard stops, and knowing exactly at what point you are wrong, and you have to really take the loss and admit the situation. I believe that's one of the most difficult aspects that aspiring traders struggle with, and it's managing to frame what a stop out or a loss means for them, so that it actually brings something constructive to the table rather than negative emotions or
right.
disrupted focus.
So talk a little more about that. So how do you reframe that? So most people would say, I got stopped out, I feel like shit because I wanted to make money. How do you reframe that, to walk us through, instead of it being a negative assessment of your character or who you are? What should it mean, or what can it mean?
Well, the way I approach the market, I believe that losses are information, and of course, when you get stopped out, if you've properly defined your plan in your trade, your particular situation, then when the market hits your stop, you gotta admit that you're wrong, and your feedback loop, which is never wrong, that the price action is always right, it's telling you that you're on the wrong side of the market. So the way I look at a loss is just it's adding up to the information that I have. So it usually makes the next premise or the next decision that much easier, because like I said, if you're working with scenarios when one of them gets really when it fails, then the alternative one gains compellingness.
Right.
So in this way also, I've learned to expect that I'll be wrong on average about 50% of the time. So somewhere along my journey as a trader, now I remember there was a fellow trader who I just remembered this from him. He said, I've learned to love a small loss.
Right.
So I really, when I get stopped out, it's no big deal. For me, it's usually, all right, I'm wrong. What does that mean? And where's the next opportunity for me?
Yeah.
And of course, that connects to knowing your tools very well, because if you don't know your tools well, you're not going to trust your work. And when you don't trust your work, it will be very hard to manifest confidence. And like I already mentioned, confidence is the only emotion you should be striving to experience, and that is very rarely the case in the beginning for traders.
Right. Yeah, I think like you said, it probably can fluctuate between being underconfident and then probably being overconfident.
Yes, and I believe that at some point I might have even said that to you, that when your confidence doesn't match your skill level,
right,
you tend to underperform if your confidence is lower, and you tend to get reckless and just do way too aggressive stuff when your confidence is really higher than your skill level. So
right.
Very important to be humble and also brutally honest with what you know, what you don't, not only particularly in what you're looking at the moment from the market, but also about yourself. Like, what are the tools you use? Do you know how to use them? Do you know the situations in which you want to use them,
yeah,
etc.? Because otherwise it just snowballs the wrong way very, very quickly.
Sure. And I think that idea of having these mental constructs or these scenarios are so important, because I think the one thing I took away from that, what you said there, is as opposed to having an emotion, let's say you get stopped out and an emotion appears and you become reactive, and that turns into a crowd trade. By having these scenarios laid out ahead of time, these probabilities that could happen, then you're expressing yourself differently, right? So when you enter into your next trade, it's not because you're now feeling reactive, like you need to participate, that you need to make your money back. Here you've already kind of spent a bit of time planning some possibilities, and then you're simply expressing the trade because you're given it some thought versus just kind of jumping in because you feel compelled like you need to.
Indeed, I believe that professional traders, if you really zoom out a little bit and look at it, they get paid for anticipating the market. Now, some people might be tempted to believe that their job is to try to call the immediate future. Well, in reality, anticipation is really about drawing possible scenarios and really deciding what you want to do about each one of them, because really the fear and the doubt are I believe they're the product of lack of anticipation, and fear and doubt are really they're very detrimental to trading. Almost every unseasoned trader struggles with, and very many seasoned ones as well. They struggle with some form of fear, whether it's fear of losing or the fear of missing an opportunity. And when you know exactly what the market can offer you because you've already done the crunch work, it's much easier to be sharp and to execute your decisions. And of course, anticipation also goes to it kind of connects to flexibility. You always got to assume that potentially you could be wrong, and if you are, what does that mean, and does that offer you any other opportunities? Because most traders really react to their losses because the pain of losing money really compels them to want to do something to make it back.
Right.
And that usually leads to deviating from the plan and not being prepared, because the market very rarely offers opportunities exactly right one after the other unless your time frame or plan calls for it. So you got to be prepared. And the way to prepare yourself, I'm a big proponent, and I demand this of all my private students, to talk to themselves out loud, at least in the beginning, and constantly ask themselves the questions that they're the most uncomfortable ones, like, what am I ignoring right now?
Nice.
Where's my stop and why? If the market does something else, what are my intentions? And this really keeps you grounded into a very practically technical context, and also keeps your I believe emotions in check, so you can maintain this frame of mind that's conducive to trading.
Yeah. And so while we're on the topic of emotions, so it sounds like one way to manage our emotions while we're trading that you're advocating is, number one, to try to remove some of the uncertainty by having, like you said, by having these scenarios laid out ahead of time. Any other ideas around managing emotions that arise from trading?
I believe good habits are a great idea. So habits take repetition, and by good habits I mean being in the habit of checking yourself, the checklist that you mentioned earlier, the template. Also, the habit of making sure that physically you're in a good place. You're not tired. You're not bored or uncomfortable, or this is really important. And habits get instituted by repetition. So you see, emotions are really just another information channel, and when people learn to appreciate them as such, rather than let them take the wheel or let them really create destructive criticism, it actually becomes very enjoyable. I know that the idea might appear a little bit extreme to many people, but I used to believe that trading is boring because it's monotonous, repetitive, and extremely, rigid and disciplined. Well, in reality, I've learned to really enjoy that structured routine of really framing the market, making sure that I'm doing everything that's necessary for me to remain in that optimal state of mind, and also be patiently waiting for my moments, for my opportunities.
Yeah, no, well said, man. So you just talked about getting the best out of yourself there. So what are some of the things that you do to get the best out of yourself? It sounds like you know, I know you're deep into fitness. I know last time we spoke, you were getting huge, you're getting swole.
Well,
what else do you do to get the best out of yourself? Fitness? Or anything else? Yeah.
Yes, I believe that being in good shape is, at least for me, it's very important. But you know, it all goes. You know, trading is a performance activity, and I believe that in order to get the best out of yourself, for me, the secret is having a balanced life. For me, that has never been easy because I tend to, I really enjoy and like to get into extremes. For example, at some point in my life, I was so, you know, dedicated to trading that I was literally ignoring almost all other aspects, and that's really not the best recipe. It's for me, sport is very important. Having time to go out and connect with nature, you know, as well. Yeah. I'm a bit of a compulsive reader. It's another part of my extreme personality. So I always like to read and even learn new things. I enjoy also a good story, whether it is a book or a movie. So I really like to. I believe that in order to perform at 100%, you should also learn to relax at 100% as well. And that's really when I've achieved these best, really the highest quality focus is when I know that I'm rested and I've relaxed and I've done things to balance myself out. Socially, physically, and then really when I sit down, many times I believe that trading almost happens effortlessly. So that relates to something else you probably want to touch on. It's how to remove I believe you mentioned that in the beginning, that you have to many times remove yourself so that trading can happen, rather than trying to necessarily add up all these things. You know what they say, that something becomes perfect not when there's nothing else to add, but when there's nothing else to subtract.
Right. That's beautiful. And so around your performance then, is it, and I think it's such an important thing you said there, because I think in our go society, it's hard for a lot of people to recognize that downtime can be productive. So what do you prioritize? Do you prioritize getting a lot of rest? Is that a priority of yours? Do you prioritize just getting time away from the screens, or just getting a certain amount of physical activity every week? Do you have a priority around that, or is it just like you said, just try to find balance and get a bunch of that stuff in?
Yes, I gotta say that sleep is very, very important for me. Yeah. I really the quality of my performance really goes down when I'm sleep deprived. That's why I always make sure that if I'm going to trade, and especially trade long, I get adequate amounts of sleep. And of course, the rest of the aspects of my life, they kind of fell together and they synergize with each other. When I'm really going after some physical goals, like you mentioned earlier, that kind of requires that rest as well. So I gotta say that between staying in good shape, having a great diet, and spending enough time behind the screen, trading, coaching, and really doing some of the other things I do, that absorbs the majority of my waking time, and that is something that I believe all traders should take a very hard look at and really examine from a very purely numerical perspective, how much time they're spending on what, and how does it contribute to their priorities. Because I've seen many a promising trader fail because they just fail to realize that they're not putting the time due to the things that are important. Whether it's, for some, it's the amount of time they actually take preparing, for a trading day. For others, it's actually doing the work over time to, spending the time to do the work to get better at your craft, which for us is trading. And for yet others is just swinging out of balance with taking a break or relaxing or really spending more time for recreation, which is very, very necessary for you to perform consistently on a high level. Yeah,
well said, man, well said. So where do you find that? So we just, you just talked about the new traders, and sometimes they're not doing maybe what's required, or they don't have the structure in place to really become successful. Where do you think a lot of new traders, or even traders who've been trading for a while, where do they get tripped up if they're not where they think they should be? Where do you think are there common places you think people get tripped up and are getting stuck?
Well, other than the already mentioned, problems with time management. I've noticed that really most people who come to trading, or even some that have been in the arena for a while, it's the lack of flexibility that really kills many people, because people come from all different backgrounds, and trading is a very it requires really a set of beliefs and a skill set that is very different from what people might bring to the table from other aspects of life. So really that lack of flexibility and perspective, really the lack of really looking at not only what you do but how you are doing things, and really humbling yourself and saying, well, maybe I should learn to do things in a different way in order to achieve my goals. That is something that I've seen very many traders fail with, and I keep beating that dead horse with many of my students, that they should be flexible, not only when they're looking at the chart and considering different scenarios, but also they should practice that flexibility in many other aspects of their life. So if you see people who have very extreme and inflexible personalities in daily affairs, and then they sit in front of the screen and they believe that they can perform in a different manner simply because they've decided that now they're behind the screen and they're going to do things in a certain way.
Sure.
Yeah, that's an illusion. Our temperaments are what they are, and of course they're not set in stone. And this is where good habits come into place, and how you can gradually over time learn to change your perspective, change your even temperament by instilling good habits and working towards improving in certain directions.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective, because it's the old saying goes, what you do anything is how you do everything. So if you bring a certain, and it's funny how, and it's not, it's, I don't think it's debatable, but it trips us up all the time, in that we don't realize that what we bring into how we are outside of trading is exactly how we're going to be in trading. So if we live a life that's full of drama and stress and anxiety or fear, that's exactly what trading is going to reflect back to us. But there's often that disconnect, and it takes some time for people to realize, the market's just kind of like a mirror. It's just basically mirroring exactly who I am, and then presenting it back to me.
Yes, and unfortunately, changing some of these aspects and habits is not only very subtle work, but for many people it feels like it's very personal and uncomfortable to face some of these aspects, because it requires it requires a humble attitude, and it requires a very honest look at yourself, and really a lot of grind work for many people, at least in my experience when I'm working with aspiring traders, a lot of grind work to change these habits, because as well as I do that some habits are just very, very hard to go. Yeah,
and what I get from what you said there is, I think the way I would describe it is, I think it forces us to become, well, if we're honest with ourselves, it forces us to be vulnerable, and I think a lot of people do not want to feel that. So then they become blind to the changes that are actually required to get to the next step.
And unfortunately for these people, it is not realistic to believe that they will achieve the desired level of consistency before they really face some of these aspects and bring significant improvements to the table. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it just reminds me of this saying, I think it's from William Perry. I read a book with a quote of his recently, and he said, he's a developmental psychologist, and he has a famous saying. He says, when someone comes to me for help, I listen very hard and ask myself, what does this person really want, and what will they do to keep themselves from getting it? And I think it applies so well to trading, because in many cases, we are ultimately the ones that are responsible and the ones that are the limiting factor in terms of our success.
I really like that. That was a very interesting spin around on the way the saying usually goes. What are they going to do? What are they not going to do to? How exactly did you say that?
So what will they do to keep themselves from getting it?
Yes, I really like that.
Yeah. So this is a really fascinating conversation so far. Let's move on for a second. So if we were talking, let's talk about a good trader, someone who's already consistently profitable, who's very comfortable, who has a good system, methodology, a pretty good mindset. What would it take? What's your advice for that person to go from good to great?
That's an interesting question. I think that for many people, for many advanced traders, it's about like we already spoke about it, to bring their confidence level to very accurately reflect their skill level. Some people tend to underperform because they just, for whatever way they have framed their beliefs, they just don't believe they can do better, or they don't believe that it's possible to do better.
Yeah.
Some of them don't believe they could do better, and yet others just find ways to sabotage themselves because of one belief or another that they hold. So I think that confidence is crucial, and in order to improve that, people need to first of all balance their life, and then I think it helps to spend some quiet time really thinking about exactly what are the beliefs that you're upholding when it comes to trading, because many people, there's a lot of talk out there about the emotional aspect of trading and the beliefs and this aspect. And I also believe that for some traders, when these things are in place, it's the other side of the coin that needs improvement. They just need to do more work, get better at their tools, or even learn new tools, and then gradually learn to apply themselves either more efficiently or more often within the market. I think these are some of the aspects. For yet others, I believe maybe it's certain qualities that they need to practice more in daily life. For example, patience is a very big one. Some people tend to do very well. If you look at their numbers, they tend to do very well in certain situations, but then they also tend to offset these results in others. So on average, when you look at their performance, it seems like there's something missing, and they're usually not satisfied with their results. So I suggest that advanced traders should find the quality feedback loop, usually somebody from the outside that is objective, and they got to listen to that loop, and there's definitely got to be an element of that feedback loop that is very, very hard. It should be very firmly grounded in numbers, because numbers don't lie. And of course, there's some soul searching, as they call it, that should be done as well.
I like the idea of a quality loop, and maybe some of those elements they lie or live outside of your trading. It's outside of your trading domain. It's in your life, right? So if you can do the
some people
combination
just I believe they need to remove a certain element of themselves from the process. For example, many people try to, for example, they identify a few things that they would like to improve on, but they don't try to work on the variables one at a time and monitor the output, right, but rather like just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. And right. This way, so if there's any progress, it's usually very unsystematic, and there's a much more efficient way to improve your results and to achieve your goals by just working on one thing at a time, and then monitoring the output and just gradually adjusting these variables. Yeah,
that's well put. So we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I'm having a lot of fun so far. But you find if I just shoot you a couple of fast questions, and then we'll get
go ahead.
Closing the interview. So we talked about in the beginning, and you kind of said, well, you couldn't think of something else you'd do if you weren't trading. So let me ask you that question again. So if you weren't trading, what would you be doing? Would you do something related to performance, or what do you think you'd be doing if you could not trade?
I probably would. I never really suspected that, but I actually enjoy teaching much more than I suspected, and I've done coaching in another field previously in my life, but I gotta say that teaching is very rewarding. But that being said, I'm also I probably don't want to use that word, but I will anyway. I'm very very strongly hooked on the performance aspect of trading. So I'd probably find something that is really challenging, but at the same time, I'd probably find a way to share and help bring other people along, that same path. So,
nice.
But it's a very difficult question, and honestly, I hope I never have to deliver a specific answer in practice for myself to that.
Cool. So, here's another question for you. So, and I didn't know about this about you. So you said you're a concert pianist. Did that? How do you think that helped you or did not help your trading?
Well, I can only hypothesize, but I believe that really, playing an instrument is at least playing the piano is not only hands and eyes coordination, but it's also being able to really read the music a few steps in advance and really it's the spatial pattern recognition. I also believe that being put on stage regularly to perform brings a certain level of inevitability of learning how to deal with stress in a positive and constructive manner. Also, I believe that because I've been lifting weights for my entire adult life, and in the iron game, you learn some grit. You learn hard work, but you also learn how to work smart. You always strive to be efficient, and of course you have to be disciplined and patient for the results. And these are really qualities that. In a very large scheme of things, it's at a very early point I realized that if I want to become good at trading, I have to develop qualities that I've been, in a way, working on already in other aspects of my life, but they're qualities that I want to possess as a man and as a human being anyway. So that is how really, many times I stay motivated, because I know that everything fits together, and all the work that's been put in, and many of the difficult emotions and periods that have been experienced, they have their place, and they're part of the big picture. They all fit together.
Yeah, that's well put. And that just made me think, you hear a lot of traders struggle with discipline, and and sometimes coaches tell them they need to be more disciplined, which doesn't really help because it's not really constructive. But your idea that maybe finding another activity where you can begin to build discipline, that discipline would ultimately transfer back to your trading as a way to work on that without directly working on that in your trading.
I believe that is one way to do it. If they can find something that they enjoy more than trading, they should definitely spend some time doing it, but it should definitely in some way contribute to them being more disciplined and following a certain plan, because compliance problems, as I believe you address them, are very common with traders, and that by the way is a staple of what coaches deal with, and I believe that really not being able to follow the plan or having a problem with discipline is really it's a function of preparation and confidence, and confidence we already spoke about. It's about trusting your work and being able to reframe what a loss means. But when it comes to preparation, surprising as it is, many people who pay lip service to wanting to be traders and to really wanting to have the lifestyle and really the benefits and to be doing that as a career, they just simply don't do the work. Whether they're lazy or just don't plan appropriately for their time and their energy, but many people just have unrealistic expectations about what it takes to really assemble that skill set and develop the mindset that needs to be attached to it to perform as a trader.
Nice. So a couple more questions, and this one's a little bit more jovial. So here's a fun question for you. So if you could have free unlimited service for 5 years from either an extremely good cook, a chauffeur, a housekeeper, a masseuse, or a secretary, which one would you choose?
Oh, that's a very difficult one, but I believe I would go for that. It's going to be a very close call between the private chef and the masseuse, because both of these kind of are very important for your physical state, and both of these, especially working over your diet, this can be very time consuming, and at this level of the game. It's all about efficiency. It's about how much time do you have to devote to this occupation. At least for me.
You don't want to give an answer. Cook or masseuse?
I'll go with the cook simply because I really enjoy good food.
Cool. All right. And so one last question. So you told us earlier that you're a really avid reader. So what are your top recommended books? And they don't have to be just related to trading, but any trading books or otherwise. What are your top recommended books that you like to gift people or share with people?
Oh, that's a difficult question because a lot of things come to mind. But when it comes to trading, I suggest that everybody should read Daniel Kahneman's book. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting and thorough review of different biases that people develop and how they develop them and what are the mechanics behind them, and of course what are the many of the manifestations of these biases socially and really I think it relates to trading as well, because it's very important to learn to understand how biases are formed and really reflect on yourself and recognize yourself within these pages when you're reading about these biases. Another book that I recently read and really enjoyed is Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile, I believe, or Anti-Fragile. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting idea, and I also believe that even though not in a very direct way, it relates to trading as well. Taleb himself has a background in risk management. He's very well published as well. So these are two that I really enjoyed recently, and there's a number of other ones. I've read all the classics when it comes to trading, and I liked many of them. But nowadays, I recommend that most of my traders do less reading and more actual work behind the charts. I really enjoyed Denise Shu's Market Mind Games. When I read it, it was very useful. These are a few that come from the top of the list.
Cool. Yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow definitely changed my mindset around trading as well. That's definitely I wasn't expecting that, but like you said, that was one of those books where I just suddenly realized that that there was a lot of mindlessness going on. I was there's a lot of unconscious thinking going on behind my trading, and just having that realization shifted a lot of things for me. So yeah, great recommendations. So, just one last question for you. So, if people enjoyed what you had to talk about today and want to know more about you or want to follow you, where's the best place for them to stay in contact with you, or where can they follow you?
Well, I'm more of a private person. I'm also extremely busy, so I don't really frequent the social media. But if people want to get in touch or like drop me a question or they can write to me at I'll give my email. It's Nikolai.
Yeah, actually, feel free. I'll be your gatekeeper, Nikolai, so you don't have to get spammed by people. And if people are interested, then certainly I can pass over.
All right, yeah. So by all means, I'll leave my email. And unfortunately, my schedule is really so busy between traveling, trading, and coaching, and trying to have a semblance of a balanced life, right. Which I seem to from time to time fall out of. That I don't really have a lot of time, and I do work privately with a number of students and colleagues. So I really I'm not. There are opportunities to work with me, but I'm really not looking to expand my operation in an official way. I also do suggest that people check the outfit that I do some projects with. I don't know if I could or should mention its name. I believe I already mentioned the daytradingacademy.com. And that's pretty much it. I believe that if people are interested, there's a lot of good stuff that they can take from me and the program there.
Sure, absolutely. So I just want to thank Nikolais very much today. It was a lot of fun having you on the show, and I know we could probably go on for another hour, but I know that I want to be respectful of your time. But let me just wrap up for the audience here. So, Nikolai shared with us a bunch of great insights today. So, what's the one biggest insight you got from this podcast? I always like to ask that question, and I'm curious. Let us know. So, drop us a line in the comment section of the blog, and tell us what was the one big idea for you. And we mentioned about a bunch of things you could even try by yourself. So what would you be willing to trying? So, pick one of our ideas and try it out for, 2 trading weeks or a month. and let us know how that turns out for you. So as always, you can find the show notes, transcript, and the resources we mentioned here by going to the blog, and that's at thetradingedge.org/episode 13. Once again, thank you, Nikolai. It was a lot of fun, man.
Houston, thank you very much for this opportunity, and good luck to all your listeners.
Thank you, man. Let's do it again.
Thank you.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Trading Edges podcast. We've taken this interview and summarized all the big ideas so that you can take action. Just head over to thetradingedge.org/podcast to find the show notes, transcript, resources, and to continue the conversation.